Enjoy the latest Inappropriate Characters dumpster fire.
Anyway, so now let's get on to the topic. And the topic in a broad sense is looking at how Wizards of the Coast, in response to the pressure of the kind of current Black Lives Matter environment and the Antifa riots and everything else, have been going out of their way to bend backwards about making important changes, because clearly if you alter the drow and the orcs in D&D, you will end racism. Racism only still exists because people are making orcs based on kind of mythical concepts rather than acting as though they were people, or something like that. It's just absolutely ridiculous. But here we are, and they are making commitments to doing this. Recently, Jeremy Crawford had said so first on his Twitter feed, and then they made an article about it on the Wizards website where they said that part of what they're going to do as a way to end racism in RPGs is that from now on orcs won't have penalties to intelligence, okay, and that they're not going to be evil anymore. That also drow are not going to be evil anymore, right? They're actually just they're basically humans in humanoid cosplay, right? There are going to be good orcs and bad orcs, presumably, and good drow and bad drow. And they're probably actually going to have this wonderful, diverse culture that is going to enrich anyone that they come to conquer, or things like that. And so this is the mentality that is currently running Wizards of the Coast. Before I add any more of my spicy commentary, I guess I'll turn it over to you two guys and tell me what you think about this newest development coming from Wizards.
You want to go first, Joe?
Take it away, Avenger.
Me? Okay. Yeah, anytime that you hear the words diversity or, any of the woke, social justice warrior stuff, it's not going to be good for D&D. It's just catering to this small niche of very loud people on Twitter and wherever. It doesn't improve the game. It's just, it's for just people that are not smart enough to separate the D&D game from reality, I guess. So it's disappointing that this is like a big thing and had to be called out, but it's inevitable. D&D seems to be going the way with all major and mainstream publishers, not all, but a lot. And I don't know. I'm not sure how political we want to get here. Obviously, we can get very political, or we can just talk about our disappointment with whatever. I'm not sure what you guys feel like.
I just wanted to kind of respond to every single bullet point going down the site. I was trying to get the quotes to show up here, but I screwed it up. So I'll just have to go through them point by point. So
why spoil a perfect record so far?
Right,
John?
Exactly. So the first bullet point in their whole diversity in D&D, and it's up on the Wizard site, is like, we present drow and orcs in a new light in 2 of our most recent books, yada yada. We'll continue this books. In those books, orcs and drow are just as morally and culturally complex as other peoples. We'll continue that approach in future books, and portraying all the peoples of D&D in relatable ways and making it clear that they're just as free as humans to decide who they are and what they do. The first thing I thought when I read that was why are they stopping at drow and orcs? Why not kobolds? Why not goblins? Why not every single monster? I mean, I guess this is the first.
Well, there's a simple answer to that.
Approach for
right?
equality, but they're falling short of their equity. agenda here.
Here's the very simple answer to that is that the SJWs think that black people are like orcs or drow.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
In their minds, that's how they are. Like, let me put it this way. If you have one side that keeps seeing dog whistles all the time, that they keep hearing these dog whistles, you found your dog, right? They're the ones that keep thinking that orcs and that drow are meant to be black people, because they think of the qualities of evil qualities that orcs and drow have, and they assume that those are qualities black people have. Right. And then because they have this SJW ideology that is supposed to, that both treats black people as subhumans, but at the same time tries to say that therefore they need the protection of the white liberal elite, and need to be cared for and controlled by a government, right, that will help them, while at the same time understanding that they can't possibly be better than they are, right? This is the fundamental hypocrisy and racism of the SJW left that is at work. So, other demi-human races don't match their stereotype of the black person the way, the SJWs have of black people. So they're not really important to them. The important part to them is to show that they know that to them, they think that orcs and drow are black people, right?
Yeah. So next are we going to get like widespread single mothers of the orc population, where the dads are just kind of like
hang on,
knocking the female orcs up and then just leaving.
Now listen, Venture. That is actually something that is very much the fault of, again, white liberalism in America, because before Lyndon Johnson and the New Society, right, before the welfare state became an institution in the United States, black families were extremely tight-knit, and all of local, urban black community was based on the family, on the value of the family, and they had huge family values in completely in tandem with most other cultures in America at that time. And what destroyed the family in black communities and black society, what caused unwed mothers was not something to do with their culture. It was to do with the fact that there was a financial incentive that the Democrats had put into place for women not to be married, because if you're married, you don't get the welfare check, right? So if you're a single mother, the government takes care of you. And they replaced the black father with the government welfare check and the social worker. And that's destroyed black communities in a bigger way than anything that happened since Jim Crow laws. It's absolutely a different kind of racism. It's racism with a caring face.
Yeah. Another thing I thought of with, why those particular two races is it's like some people have don't group things together in the way I would group them together, I guess, basically is what I'm trying to say. So like for drow, like people doing cosplay as drow and getting in blackface, like, yeah, I mean, you guys know that's had, people have called, people dressing as drow, cosplaying as drow as being blackface for quite a while. And I feel like that's where like the racism part in the, whatever, I guess, more far left mind, and then with the orcs though too, it's they were described as brutish or something, and then this whatever, I don't know, whoever came up with this stuff, Chris Perkins or whatever, Wizards R&D, in their head, just like you were saying, like they think of brutish as something that is associated with black or African Americans or something, Either way, I don't know.
Doesn't it go all the way back to Tolkien? Like, wouldn't people that were reading Lord of the Rings say that Tolkien was being racist because of... Well,
that's a claim that they've in fact made about Tolkien, and it's completely wrong. I mean, it's Tolkien, and the problem here is that postmodern society is incapable of understanding myth, right? Yeah. And I've talked about this in one of my videos on my channel. If you're not subscribed to my channel, be sure to do so and watch my very informative videos. But in what I pointed out is that in myth, in Western myth, the non-human is not used as a parallel for other races. It's used as a symbol, as a symbolic allegory of different moral qualities, right? So the orcs do not represent Black people or some other people in Tolkien. They represent the corruption of sin, right? They were elves that were twisted and corrupted by sinister power and by the modern the machines of the dark forces, you know, and so they were turned into twisted versions of their former self, right? And remembering that Tolkien was a profound Catholic and that Lord of the Rings is a Catholic allegory, this is something you see all across the Catholic Middle Ages in all kinds of folk tales and legends, and going back to things like the witch mark and stuff like that, right? Is that sin is supposed to physically corrupt you. And in fairy tales and in legends and mythology, you see that over and over again. So that's what orcs are supposed to represent, right? Just like the elves represent this kind of corruption of pride in a way, right? And dwarves the corruption of greed. So they're people that are they're representative not of other races, but of what people would be like if they were driven by certain simple qualities, right, or imperfections.
Sure. Or taking it to, down the more Pomo road, it's otherness, right? But, why not apply otherness to kobolds or owl bears or bugbears or hobgoblins or any other race in the game? The next thing they're going to get mad is that you can't call them monsters anymore.
Well, the deeper problem is that the relativism that was taught by the postmodernists, by people like Foucault and Derrida, means that you can't have effective allegory. You can't have symbolism. So the whole idea of symbolism in myth falls apart, and you have a whole generation that literally can't understand it, right? Like they can't even conceive of these concepts, and they don't speak the basic language of the West. The basic language of the West isn't English or Spanish or French or German. The basic language of the West is a language of symbols, right? Of the symbols of ancient European paganism, of Christianity, and of the folklore of the European world. And that was then elaborated on over the centuries by other people like William Shakespeare and Cervantes, who has just had his statue defaced in spite of the fact that he was literally a slave once, and people like that, right? That were able to expand that into the Middle Ages and the Renaissance and the Enlightenment and even the modern period, right? But that can't happen anymore because a postmodernist, a relativist, can't think in anything but the most literal positivist terms. So to them, there's good, there's bad. Bad people are people who like the Orange Man, right? Or who are intolerant, and good people are everybody else. and you have to, if you want to see an example of something written by people who have no concept of symbol, look at the new trilogy of Star Wars movies, especially the last two, right? Especially the second one. And you see there, it just turns, instead of having rich symbolic myth, what you have, which was what Star Wars used to be, right? Even as late as the 70s, you could still do that. But now the people who have grown up in the period since then are incapable of doing that. And what they produce is just leftist political propaganda as the shallowest of political metaphors, instead of having any kind of rich, deep symbolism. Anyway, to continue on our list, they then also mentioned the Vistani, which is kind of a Mott and Bailey approach, I think, because, the Vistani are different from other races.
Well, hold on. But there was, I was hoping you guys actually could clarify the second bullet point for me, because they said basically they're doing D&D book reprints, and that they, in the reprintings of Tomb of Annihilation and Curse of Strahd, we changed text that was racially insensitive. Does anyone even know what that is?
I don't know about Tomb of Annihilation, but presumably in the Curse of Strahd, it has to do with the Vistani, right? The Vistani
yeah.
are the Ravenloft version of gypsies. And
Right.
there has been criticism that the Vistani are, you know, a racial, not a racial, an ethnic stereotype, a cultural stereotype, and that they, you know, they play on stereotypes about the gypsy people. And I mean,
Sure,
that's
but they,
obviously, that's very obviously true in one sense, right?
yeah, I mean, but I don't know. To me, that it's also is like there is like a cultural appropriation, right? Because the Vistani are, I would say, I don't know what are you supposed to say? The Romani? No,
Yeah, Romani, the
Romani.
gypsies, yeah.
Yeah, they're it's based on Romani culture, but I don't know. I didn't read a lot of the Ravenloft stuff, a little bit of it, but I didn't. I mean, it was kind of their own thing. You know what I mean? They're just they filed off the serial numbers or whatever, but you know it. I mean, part of the sin there, I think, is cultural appropriation.
No, I think they're more worried about it being stereotypical. Romani people justifiably get really upset about
Yeah.
the stereotype of, you know, which have always been a fairly persecuted people throughout Europe, right? The gypsies have been seen as, you know, sinister and criminal and things like that. And so it's completely understandable that they would be uncomfortable with that. Now, Ravenloft is not really based on any idea of what the Romani are supposed to really be like, you know, or what they are really like, but rather it's playing off of the 19th century Gothic horror novel, like the original Dracula, and many other of these Penny Dreadful type stories that happened in the 19th century, which of course often feature gypsies as, you know, weird fortune tellers or sinister servants of the occult or things like that. Now, is it still proper to do that today? I don't know. I do think that it's a more questionable issue than the issue of orcs or drow. Orcs or drow aren't people,
Yeah.
right?
Oh, definitely. Right.
Romani obviously are real people and they're a real culture, right?
Well, what I think they should do is they should retrofit their Vistani on just Midwestern like trailer trash, just like the poor white trash that just lives in, you know, Middle America. Just stereotype off them.
Yeah, well, because that's the only cultural group in America you're still allowed to insult, right?
Well, yeah, too. But I mean, how many gypsies are there really left in the world? Like 200-300?
No, there's quite a lot. They're all over Europe. There's, you know, I think quite a lot of them in Romania to start with.
Maybe. I really don't know.